Susie Sausage Head.
So, let me tell y'all about the time Susie Sausage Head and her friends were leaving the train station. There was about 6 of them and they were all talking and singing loudly as they walked down the damp streets of town. The ladies were all feeling good from the libations they had partaken in and had just left one of the many night spots they went to that evening. At this point, the lounges were all closing and the ladies all agreed that they should grab something to eat before heading home for the night. There was only one place open at this hour. Susie Sausage Head led the way to their favorite late night eatery, the Moss Burger. There was a local myth that the burgers at the Moss Burger were not beef at all, but in fact soy, which to the ladies was undesirable to say the least. But if it was soy, to Susie they did a great job of hiding it. Still, the ladies walked on and sang made up songs about there being no cows and that the Moss Burger was all soy and moss. When Susie Sausage Head and the ladies arrived, they found the Moss Burger packed and filled with patrons. Everyone must have had the same idea as them, at the same time as them. As the ladies looked around, they found that only one booth was available in the restaurant and began to make their way to it. The configuration of the booths made it so that you could walk either to the left or right side and encounter booths on both sides of the room. The booth they spotted was on the more crowded side of the room, so the ladies split up to divide and conquer the task at hand. Before, however, they could claim victory, 3 women showed up out of nowhere and plopped into the booth. Susie Sausage Head and her friends were outraged and immediately began to protest the invasion of their booth. But the ladies that sat down were not fazed and refused to give it up. The protest of injustice voiced by Susie and her friends became too loud to ignore, and before anyone could be asked to leave, they were pulled away to another booth by friends that were already at the Moss Burger and eating. At first, the ladies were still intent on fighting the battle over the booth, but it did not take long for them to calm down and begin to look over the menu for something to eat. Once Susie and her friends were eating, they had all but forgotten about the booth, and with the exception of the occasional glance in the usurper's direction, they had even forgotten to be mad. If only it could have stayed that way. Susie Sausage Head had to go to the restroom, and as a rule, the ladies practiced the buddy system. No one went to the restroom alone regardless of biological needs at the time. With this in mind, Susie and one of her 5 friends headed to the ladies' room in the back of the restaurant, past the booth they had lost. The ladies could have gone the other way to avoid the booth, but that was not how any of them were built. In fact, they slowed down and eyeballed each occupant of the booth as they walked by, and as expected, the ladies sitting in the booth returned said eyeballs. Susie then found herself asking exactly what they were looking at, and before the biggest of the ladies could respond, one of Susie's friends that did not need to use a restroom was flying over the rear backrest of the booth with a sling back heel in her hand. She landed and slid on the table, knocking over both food and beverage as she did. The end.